Hey, welcome back to Mocktails with Marina. I'm your host, Marina, and today we're diving back into the Department in a Box series with part 4. And if you've already been following along, you know the theme of this entire week. Your business does not scale on vibes, right? It scales on structure. So we've already covered project management, we've covered marketing, and we've covered interviewing, hiring, and onboarding. And by the way, if you've not watched listened to the last 3 episodes, go do that before this one because they all build on each other. So today, we're moving into something that absolutely every bar, bottle shop, cafe, or boutique third place in general needs, even the ones that swear they don't. I'm talking about employee manuals and SOPs. Or as I like to call them, your Please Stop Asking Me This Bible. Let's get into it. So to begin, employee manuals matter so much more than you think. So many founders think that manuals are boring, corporate, or unnecessarily big business. They think people don't read them. They think that the processes somehow update too much, or there are too many little things to cover. There's so many excuses why people don't want to make these, and quite frankly, they're all terrible excuses. There's no single one good excuse, period. If you are running a business by yourself, you still want to do this because eventually you need to be able to, number 1, take inventory of your processes, and number 2, decide what you want to outsource, delegate, automate. Number 3, you want to make sure that what you're doing makes sense, right? If you write out a process and it sounds silly, it might just be silly, or it might be brilliant. You don't know until you've sat down and analyzed and put on your CEO hat in that way. But the main thing here is that if you do not define the standard, people will create their own, even if it's your business, right? And when you run a community-based business, especially a kava bar or a non-alc third space, people want to do the right thing, right? Like they want to be aligned, they want to protect the vibe, but they need to know what the right thing is. And an employee manual isn't just like a set of rules, right? It's context, boundaries, and expectations, right? So there's storytelling, there are firm lines, there are motivational goals, there are, again, those expectations that are set so that it's clear what is success and what isn't. It's basically like, it's the difference between why did my bar back do that and oh yeah, that's exactly why we do it here or how we do it here, right? So you're not left questioning why people are acting a certain way. There is a clear deviation or there's not. And it makes it much easier to manage. And quite frankly, it's one of those things that builds a supportive workplace culture because when people understand what the expectations are of them, they're not expending this extra energy trying to figure it out. Therefore, they feel not threatened, but secure by their jobs. And therefore, they now have this space that you have provided, this structure to flourish, right? So this is the difference between a supportive workplace culture and just like complete internal chaos disguised as we're just chill. Because, newsflash, chill businesses still need structure. And again, they actually thrive on it. I can't tell you how many times I've entered environments that feel more like an orphanage than an actual business because there's no one in charge, chain of command isn't clear, and by no one in charge, I don't just mean people, I mean there's not even rules. So regulars, if there are any, don't even know exactly what to expect. So that being said, let's focus on what a great manual actually does, right? So a great employee manual does 3 main things. Protects the business, it protects the staff, and it protects the customer experience. So talking about protecting the business, these types of policies, getting them written down, getting these expectations in the hands of your employees actually keeps you legally safe. It also keeps you operationally consistent, and it makes you prepared for the moments that you don't see coming, right? So if you have turnover, you have emergencies, you have difficult customers, you name it, this is a living, breathing ecosystem that you are adding to as the business learns and grows itself. So, side note, we're going to talk about why this needs to be in Notion, and you should never print this out, right? Because this is a living, breathing document, and it needs to be written in there that the expectation is that you can access this at any time. Any updates will be addressed in staff meetings so that Number one, again, you're legally covered, but number two, everyone understands where to go, so they're not asking you everything all the time, right? So this leads to point number two. This protects the staff, because good people do their best work when they know what the expectations, the boundaries are, and what resources that they have access to in order to live up to those expectations. When people feel secure, they naturally take ownership and they take pride in what they're doing. People tend to stick around longer. And actually, that turnover doesn't happen as often. But when it does, they're willing to stick around and help you train the next person rather than sabotage everything that you've been trying to build. You don't want to feel like you're starting over from square one every single time. And so by protecting the staff, you are therefore protecting yourself and your business. So let's chat about number three, protecting the customer experience. The manual is what guarantees that your community gets the same quality, the same vibe, and the same level of care, no matter who is behind the bar or the cash register that day. This is especially true in the non-alc world, where your customers are sober or sober curious. Maybe they're neurodivergent or wellness oriented, or simply looking for a safe, regulated experience. Consistency matters here more than anywhere else. Like, people are so aware. They're having a more like sober experience, right? So they can feel every nook and cranny. So you want to be intentional with that. Okay. So how do we get more intentional? So we've already talked about there being a manual, which I'm sure you've seen many in your life that have just kind of these, like rules, expectations. We mentioned some storytelling. But what makes an employee manual so powerful is when it includes like true SOPs. SOPs, standard operating procedures. So this isn't simply a one-liner saying, clock in on time. What does on time mean? What is the entire process for scheduling so that term on time makes sense? Because that means different things in different places. Some people and places expect you to show up 15 minutes before your shift. Some right on the money. Some are kind of more flexible, and it's more about peak hours and peak time. So how do you define these things so that, again, not only is everybody playing the same game and is aware of the same rules and boundaries and expectations, but again, you are also legally covering yourself so that should there be some sort of dispute that arises, you made it as clear as possible, right? So if your employee manual is the why, then your SOPs are the how. This is where your business stops living in your head and actually becomes something that your team can run without you. And that's your goal, by the way. If you are an owner in your day-to-day, your goal is to have a successful business is a business that can run without you. And, maybe 5 to 20 hours a week of oversight at most. But even then, your goal is to completely render yourself out of a job. That is how you know. And if there's a single question that anybody ever asks you, you probably need to write something, whether it's an SOP or part of the employee manual, out so that it is out of your head and they can simply go to a link and figure it all out. Right? So SOPs are how you delegate tasks confidently, reduce training time, remove guesswork, maintain quality control, scale without consistent verbal reminders, and, frankly, avoid burnout. They're also the backbone of any promotions or performance reviews, accountability, staff retention, and leadership development. Every SOP is technically like a tiny little contract that says, this is how we do it, and this is why it matters. Okay, you cannot build a team without them. So again, I don't want to confuse anyone. An employee manual is an overall concept, and SOPs are something that lives within this employee manual, and it could also live within other kind of departments that are wedged into the overall employee manual, right? This is the how to do everything in your business all in one place. So here's what happens when you don't have this all set up. If you've ever said the following phrases, I want you to be very honest with yourself, right? So if you've ever said, why am I repeating myself every day? Why does every shift do things differently? Why does no one follow through? Why does it fall apart when I'm not there? Why are my managers overwhelmed? Why do I feel like the only adult here? I'm going to tell you something so gently. It's because the business is running on oral tradition instead of documentation. So when there's no manual and no SOPs, training becomes inconsistent, standards get diluted, conflicts become more personal, expectations get very fuzzy, accountability becomes emotional, and you become the bottleneck. This is not a people problem. This is not a culture problem. It's not a my team isn't mature enough problem. It's a missing structure problem. So when you have a solid employee manual, there are at least 7 main, I don't want to call them departments, but I'm going to call them sections of this employee manual beyond the very specialized tasks. These are the 7 things that are general, that no matter what level an employee is hired on, they are receiving this information, right? So you've got number 1, culture and brand expectations, the basically why we exist section. Number 2 is your HR policies. So this is the legally necessary stuff. And this is very specific to your state laws, depending on where you're listening from. The 3rd section is expectations. So this is where you would put appearance, communication, shift protocols, boundaries, stuff like that. 4 is safety. So this matters so much more for places that are serving functional botanicals than you could possibly imagine. This could be its own whole episode, so I'm going to leave it there. If that's something that's very interesting to you, please send me an email, or any of this really. Send me an email, hello@marinamars.com, and we'll chat specifics for your business. But yes, there needs to be a safety section. Then the 5th section is roles. So this is kind of what each position is specifically responsible for and very clearly defined. 6 is procedures. So this is where the SOPs really start linking together and we really dive deeply into everything. And then 7, this is a bonus depending on how your staffing is set up, or if you're simply a team of collaborators, it might look different. But this is performance and growth. So that's for both the business and for the individual. So your staff should know the path forward and not have to guess if they're looking to grow. So you can keep it friendly and concise, but do not skip this. But then I also want to make sure that you are including, what does performance and growth, how is that measured for the business as well? So not just your employees, but you want to be able to link the, why you're judging people, why you're rating their performance. You want to show them, oh, it's not because I'm just power hungry and I'm sitting here to judge you. It's because this is very important to the growth goals of the business, right? So all of that being said, what goes into a great SOP, which is, again, individual pages within the employee manual that teach you how to do whatever we talked about initially. So a good SOP is going to answer 5 questions. What is the task? Why does it matter? When should it be done? Who is responsible? And how exactly do we do it step by step? If yours don't hit all 5 points here, they are not SOPs, they're drafts, they're notes. The SOPs inside the department in a box version of this module are the ones I've written for actual bars and bottle shops. They're clear, tested, and ready for your team to plug into your Notion, Google Drive, or Binder. Again, because we made this in Notion, we really highly recommend you stick with Notion. But the point of this is there's this 5-part accountability of every single SOP, and you're going to see that sometimes it's going to look kind of scientific, right? If you're writing out a recipe for a menu, it's going to be very straightforward. Sometimes it's going to look like an essay. If it's something a little bit more okay, so how do you deal with a hostile homeless person entering or a dumpster fire, right? Those are real things that are going to have some nuance to them. So different SOPs are going to look different, but they're all going to have those 5 main questions answered. So if you want to feel like your bar or bottle shop is more than a collection of people just trying their best, then this is the department that elevates you into a real business, a real leader, a real third space, and a real brand that people can actually trust. This is the department that removes friction from your day-to-day. This is the department that builds culture. This is the department that makes your team stay. So if you want the templates and the complete system, the link is in the episode summary to get instant access to the employee manual and SOPs box. And next time we are going to be moving into Department 5. I'm so excited to show you a few more departments in this series. So as always, if you need anything in the meantime, just let me know, and make sure that you take a look at the episode description right now to get the link inside of the employee manual box.